I'm a 38-year-old woman, and in my family, I've always been known as the responsible one, the one people turn to when they need advice, a favor, or a problem fixed. I have a stable career, a solid reputation, and I don't get involved in unnecessary drama. At least, that's how it used to be before my 19-year-old niece, Taylor, decided to drag my name through the mud. Taylor has always been the golden child of my brother and sister-in-law. She was their miracle baby, spoiled from the moment she was born. While other kids learned the value of hard work and consequences, Taylor learned that throwing a tantrum would get her what she wanted. If she got in trouble at school, her parents defended her. If she hurt someone's feelings, they excused it as just her personality. It wasn't my business, so I stayed out of it. For most of Taylor's childhood, I didn't have much interaction with her. She was the kind of kid who only cared about people when they had something to offer her. As she got older, she mastered the art of being charming when she needed to be, but underneath it all, she was manipulative. Still, we had no direct conflicts, until she asked me for a job. I run my own company, and a few months ago, Taylor came to me asking for a position. She had no relevant experience, no skills, and she didn't even try to act professional about it. She just assumed I would give her a job because we were family. I told her, as nicely as I could, that she wasn't qualified. If she wanted to work in my field, she needed to start at the bottom somewhere else, gain experience, and then maybe we could revisit the idea in the future. That conversation should have ended there, but it didn't. Taylor reacted as if I had personally insulted her. She flipped from entitled confidence to outright rage, accusing me of being jealous of her youth and beauty. She actually said those words. I thought she was joking at first, but no, she was completely serious. I laughed it off, assuming she was just embarrassed. But from that moment on, she treated me like an enemy. At first, I ignored it. A few passive-aggressive comments at family gatherings, whatever. Eye rolls when I spoke, not worth my energy. But then, the rumors started. One day, a cousin casually mentioned that Taylor had been saying some nasty things about me. I brushed it off. Teenagers talk. But then, at a family gathering, my aunt pulled me aside and asked why I was sabotaging young women's careers. I had no idea what she was talking about. Turns out, Taylor had been telling people that I was bitter and vindictive, that I refused to help women succeed in my industry because I couldn't stand the idea of younger women surpassing me. That was ridiculous enough. But it got worse. I started noticing tension whenever I was around family. People were whispering. Conversations got quiet when I entered the room. And then, the final straw, my own boss, who is also a longtime family friend, asked to speak with me privately. He looked uncomfortable, almost hesitant, before finally saying, "I've been hearing some things about your behavior, and I just wanted to check in." I felt sick. This wasn't just family gossip anymore. Taylor's lies had made their way into my professional life. I asked him what, exactly, he had heard. He was hesitant to get into details, but eventually, he admitted that someone had been spreading rumors about me being cruel to younger women in my field, that I had a history of blocking opportunities for ambitious young women, especially if they were attractive, that I had even blacklisted someone unnamed, from getting jobs in my industry. It hit me all at once. Taylor wasn't just venting or exaggerating in casual conversations. She was deliberately trying to destroy my reputation. And worse, people were believing her. I was furious, but more than that, I was in shock. Who does something like this? I had given her a perfectly reasonable answer when she asked for a job. I hadn't done anything cruel or unfair to her, but somehow she had twisted reality into a version where I was a jealous, bitter old woman trying to ruin her life. At that moment, I knew I couldn't ignore this anymore. This wasn't teenage immaturity or petty drama. This was a full-scale smear campaign, and if I didn't do something about it, Taylor could actually damage my career. I decided right then and there I was going to find out exactly what Taylor had been saying, who she had been talking to, and how far this had gone. Because if she wanted to play this game, she was about to learn that I don't lose. I wasn't about to let Taylor get away with this. If she wanted to play dirty, I was going to find out exactly what she had been saying and to whom. But I wasn't going to charge in blindly. I needed information first. At the next family gathering, I made a point to mingle. I kept things light, asking about work, kids, vacations, just casual small talk. Then, when the opportunity presented itself, I slipped in questions about Taylor. Not in an obvious way, but just enough to gauge reactions. It didn't take long before I started piecing things together. Taylor had been telling different versions of the story depending on who she was talking to. Some family members had heard that I was jealous of her, that I was bitter about getting older and couldn't stand the idea of a younger, more attractive woman rising in my field. Others had been told that I had outright bullied her, that I had humiliated her when she asked for a job and laughed at her for even trying. The most outrageous claim? That I had actively blacklisted her from jobs in my industry, using my influence to make sure she never got hired. That one hit a nerve. I had no involvement in Taylor's job applications. I hadn't even spoken to anyone about her outside of our family, yet somehow she had managed to convince people that I was the reason she was struggling to find work. I checked her social media, and sure enough, there were multiple, vague, dramatic posts about older generations refusing to uplift young women and toxic family members who gatekeep success. She never mentioned my name, but it was obvious who she was talking about. The comment sections were full of her friends hyping her up, saying things like, "You're too good for their negativity, and some people just can't handle your glow up." At this point, I needed answers from someone who would be honest. Taylor's father seemed like the most logical place to start. I reached out to him, bringing up the rumors casually. He didn't hesitate to confirm that he and his wife fully believed Taylor's story. In his eyes, I had been cold and dismissive when she came to me for help. Instead of giving her an opportunity, I had supposedly shut doors in her face and made sure she had no future. That's when it clicked. Taylor had successfully manipulated her own parents into believing her lies. And if she could do that to them, she could convince just about anyone. I needed to know how far this had spread. I started reaching out to some of my industry connections, asking if they had heard anything about Taylor applying for jobs. A few of them confirmed that she had applied, but the feedback was brutal. She had been rejected not because of any blacklist, but because of her own poor interview performance. Some hiring managers even mentioned that she had exaggerated her experience on her resume and got caught in the lie. Others said she had come across as entitled, as if she expected to be handed a position rather than earning it. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just some immature tantrum. This was full-scale character assassination. Taylor hadn't just been venting or spreading a little gossip, she had gone out of her way to make me look like a vindictive, jealous person. She had painted herself as the victim, and me as the villain standing in her way. I wasn't going to let it slide. Clearing my name wasn't enough. If I simply disproved her claims, she would just twist the story again, play the victim, and find a way to weasel out of it. No, I needed to make sure she faced the consequences of what she had done. So I came up with a plan. I wasn't just going to expose her lies. I was going to make her do it to herself. I needed proof, real, undeniable evidence that Taylor had been lying. So, I got to work. First, I went through every message I had with her. Nothing too damning, just her usual passive-aggressive remarks and complaints about how older women didn't support her. But I wasn't just looking for direct evidence. I wanted to establish a pattern. Then, I reached out to a few family members who had mentioned her trash-talking me before. Some of them were hesitant, not wanting to get involved, but others were more than willing to share screenshots of texts and voice messages Taylor had sent them. It was all there. Complaints about me being bitter and vindictive, lies about how I had used my connections to blacklist her, exaggerated stories of how I had laughed in her face when she asked for a job. I even found messages where she had contradicted herself, telling one person that I was jealous of her looks, while telling another that I had bullied her because I hated ambitious young women. Then I went after the biggest lie of all, the claim that I had sabotaged her job prospects. I contacted the recruiter from the company she had applied to, the one she had accused me of influencing. It wasn't hard to get the truth. The recruiter didn't even hesitate. Taylor had been caught lying on her application, inflating her work experience, and when they questioned her, she had thrown a tantrum. That was why she hadn't been hired. Not because of me. Now that I had everything I needed, I decided to set a little trap. I casually mentioned to a few family members that I had spoken to a recruiter and knew exactly why Taylor hadn't been hired, but I left it at that. I didn't give details, just enough to plant a seed. And right on cue, within a week, the rumor had spread. Apparently, I had bragged about getting Taylor rejected. She had told people that I was openly gloating about how I had crushed her chances and made sure she would never work in my industry. That was it. That was all the confirmation I needed. She wasn't just exaggerating things in the heat of the moment. She was deliberately twisting anything I said into a weapon against me. It was time to end this. I called for a family meeting. Not everyone showed up, but enough did, especially the people Taylor had manipulated. Taylor herself arrived looking smug, like she was walking into a stage where she would play the poor wronged victim. Her parents sat beside her, clearly expecting me to look foolish and defensive. I didn't waste time. I pulled out my phone and started reading texts aloud. The messages where Taylor had lied about me, where she had twisted my words to make me look like a villain. Then, I played the voice messages she had sent to different family members, where she had completely contradicted herself. The room went silent. Then, I pulled out my final piece of evidence, the recruiter's statement. I made it clear that Taylor hadn't been rejected because of anything I had done. She had ruined her own chances with her lies and entitlement. Taylor's face went from smug to pale. She tried to interrupt, but the damage was done. People started shifting uncomfortably, whispering to each other. Her parents looked stunned. Her mother tried to say something about how there must be some misunderstanding, but even she didn't sound convinced. Taylor finally snapped. She started crying, claiming I was obsessed with ruining her life, that I had collected evidence like a psycho just to humiliate her, but no one was buying it. Then came the final blow. One of my younger cousins, who had been quiet the entire time, spoke up. She pointed out that Taylor had been bragging just last week about how she had played the family into taking her side. That was all it took. The last bit of sympathy Taylor had left disappeared in an instant. I made one thing clear before the meeting ended. I wasn't going to tolerate Taylor's slander anymore. If she so much as breathed another lie about me, I would escalate things legally. No one spoke after that, just an awkward, heavy silence. Taylor sat frozen, realizing that her carefully crafted scheme had completely collapsed. For a few days after the family meeting, Taylor disappeared. No texts, no passive-aggressive posts, nothing. She even left the family group chat, which was a small miracle in itself. I figured she had finally realized she'd lost and was trying to lay low. Then, the email arrived. It was sent anonymously to multiple relatives, extended family members, distant cousins, even my parents' old friends. The email painted me as a workplace tyrant, someone with a long history of sabotaging people's careers, especially young women. It claimed I had gotten several people blacklisted, that I enjoyed crushing ambitious women, and that anyone who crossed me professionally was doomed. It was over the top, filled with dramatic language, and made vague references to multiple sources, but never named a single one. I didn't even have to think twice. I knew exactly who had written it. The writing style, the phrasing, even the exaggerated victim narrative, it was all Taylor, and she wasn't as smart as she thought. A quick check of the email's metadata confirmed what I already suspected. It had been sent from an anonymous throwaway account, but the phrasing and writing style made it obvious who had written it. I didn't confront her. I didn't even reply. Instead, I screenshotted everything and sent it directly to her parents. Taylor's father responded almost immediately. He was livid. I don't know what was said on their end, but whatever conversation happened between them, it didn't go well for Taylor. Her mother, on the other hand, weakly tried to defend her, saying there must be some misunderstanding. But there was no room for doubt. The proof was there, and now her parents had to face the reality of what their daughter had done. But Taylor wasn't finished. A few days later, a video popped up on her TikTok. In it, she was crying, full sobs, red eyes, trembling voice. She didn't name names, but she heavily implied that she was being harassed by a toxic family member who was obsessed with ruining her life. She talked about how some people just can't stand to see young women succeed, and how she was being bullied for trying to make something of herself. It was dramatic, vague, and clearly fishing for sympathy. It would have been easy for her followers to believe her, except she wasn't the only one who saw it. My younger cousin, who had been at the family meeting, wasted no time commenting under the video. "You mean the aunt you tried to ruin with fake emails?" The comment blew up immediately. Other family members started chiming in, calling her out, asking why she was lying. Someone even reposted screenshots of the email, proving that Taylor had been the one trying to sabotage me, not the other way around. Taylor deleted the video within an hour, but the damage was done. Screenshots had already spread, and now, even people outside the family were questioning her. I still hadn't directly engaged with her. I didn't need to. Instead, I forwarded the screenshots of her TikTok, her email, and the responses she had gotten straight to the family group chat. The reaction was immediate. While some relatives immediately distanced themselves from Taylor, a few still tried to defend her, insisting that she was young and had made mistakes. Others hesitated, unwilling to pick sides, but the overwhelming evidence against her made it hard for them to continue justifying her actions. Some of them outright said they were embarrassed they had ever believed her. Others demanded she apologize. Her parents, though clearly shaken by the evidence, still tried to make excuses at first, claiming she was just going through a rough phase. But as more proof surfaced, even they had to admit that she had taken things too far. Taylor must have realized she was losing control of the situation, but instead of backing down, she escalated again. She started blocking family members left and right, first the ones who had called her out, then anyone who had stayed silent. It was like she thought if she cut off enough people, she could pretend none of this had ever happened. But at this point, there was no coming back from it. Taylor wasn't done yet. After the failed email stunt and her disastrous TikTok meltdown, she switched strategies. Instead of attacking me directly, she started playing the victim. She went to various family members, spinning a new sob story, how she was being bullied by me, how I was turning everyone against her, and how I had ruined her reputation. At first, some of the older relatives were sympathetic. They didn't know the full story, just that there had been a family argument and now Taylor was in distress. A few of them reached out to me, hinting that maybe I had gone too far. I didn't respond. There was no point in explaining myself anymore. I had proof of everything, and I knew Taylor couldn't resist making things worse for herself. And right on cue, a week later, a letter arrived in the mail. It was a cease and desist order. At least, that's what Taylor wanted it to be. The letter was typed, but the formatting was completely wrong. No legal firm's name, no proper letterhead, just some official-sounding words that didn't actually mean anything. I read through it, and by the second paragraph, I was already sure it was fake. Taylor had either written it herself or paid some shady website to generate it. I sent it to my lawyer just to be safe. He confirmed what I already knew. Not only was it completely bogus, but if Taylor had actually tried to pass this off as a real legal document, she could be in serious trouble. Falsifying legal threats is a crime. I didn't react. I didn't call Taylor. I didn't message her. I didn't even acknowledge it. Instead, I sent her a real legal notice, a proper lawyer-drafted warning that if she continued with this behavior, harassment, defamation, and now fake legal threats, she would be facing actual legal consequences. Taylor panicked. Within hours of receiving the notice, she started backtracking. She reached out to a few relatives, claiming the whole thing had been a joke that I had taken too seriously. She tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, saying she never meant for it to go that far. But she had gone too far. And I wasn't the only one who saw it. Since the fake cease and desist could have legal implications, I consulted my lawyer before deciding what to do. Instead of taking it to her college directly, I had my lawyer draft a formal response, making it clear that any further attempts at defamation would result in real legal action. It didn't take long before Taylor was called in for a disciplinary hearing. Universities take legal fraud very seriously, and she had just handed them undeniable proof that she was willing to falsify documents. Her parents were finally forced to acknowledge the mess she had created. Up until this point, they had made excuses for her, convinced themselves that she was just being dramatic. But when Taylor's college got involved, they had no choice but to face reality. Taylor went silent. No more social media posts. No more dramatic stories. She disappeared from family events, stopped answering messages, and completely cut off contact with anyone who had called her out. Her parents, now fully realizing how deep she had dug herself into this hole, tried to smooth things over. They privately reached out to some family members, trying to do damage control, but no one was buying it. Everyone had seen what happened. No amount of excuse-making could change that. With Taylor out of the picture, things settled down. I got back to my life, my work, and everything I had put on hold while dealing with her nonsense. But I knew this wasn't over. Taylor had lost, but people like her never just accept consequences. They always come back for one last desperate move. And when she did, I would be ready. A few weeks passed without a single word from Taylor. No social media updates, no dramatic family messages, nothing. It was as if she had vanished. Then I got a call. Taylor had received a disciplinary warning from her college, not full probation, but enough to make her realize that her actions had consequences. The fake cease and desist letter had triggered an official review by her college, and when they looked into her conduct, they found other red flags, missed assignments, poor attendance, and even complaints from professors about her behavior. Her parents, once so sure she would graduate and land a prestigious job, were devastated. But that wasn't all. Somehow, Taylor's past behavior had finally caught up to her in other ways. A few of her former friends, people who had once blindly supported her, had turned against her. Apparently, Taylor had been lying about more than just me. Someone leaked messages where she had trash-talked the very same friends who had defended her online. The betrayal was too much for them, and one by one they started cutting her off. Then came the worst blow for Taylor. Her own family was turning on her. More leaked messages surfaced, this time exposing how Taylor had insulted her parents behind their backs. In one, she complained about how her father was too dumb to understand the modern job market. In another, she mocked her mother for being pathetic and gullible. These messages made their way back to her parents. Her father, clearly torn, told her that until she showed real remorse and took responsibility for her actions, he would no longer be financially supporting her. Her mother, though reluctant, finally agreed that Taylor needed to learn consequences. No more tuition payments, no more allowance, no more covering for her mistakes. Taylor, who had never worked a real job in her life, suddenly found herself scrambling. And that's when she made one last attempt to reach out to me. Out of nowhere, I got a message from her. No apology, no acknowledgement of everything that had happened, just a casual "Hey, how have you been?" As if we were old friends. I ignored it. She tried again, sending another message about how she wanted to talk things out. I left that one unanswered too. Then she switched tactics. She made a public post online, a long, dramatic apology about how she had made mistakes and how she had let the wrong influences guide her. She never mentioned my name directly, but everyone knew who she was talking about. No one bought it. The same family members who had once defended her were now openly mocking her. The comments under her post ranged from sarcastic to outright brutal. Some reminded her of the lies she had spread. Others pointed out that she wasn't actually apologizing, just trying to save face. Embarrassed, she deleted the post within hours. And from that point on, Taylor faded into obscurity. I heard bits and pieces through the family. She was struggling to find a decent job, working a low-paying retail gig just to cover her basic expenses. She had moved in with a friend after her parents refused to keep supporting her. She lost many of her close friends who felt betrayed, though a few still clung to the belief that she had been misunderstood. Meanwhile, I moved forward with my life. My reputation was intact, my career was thriving, and I didn't have to waste another second dealing with Taylor's nonsense. She had spent so much time trying to destroy me that she had ended up destroying herself. Months passed, and life finally settled back into normalcy. Taylor was nothing more than a past inconvenience. No more drama, no more fake accusations, no more desperate attempts to ruin my reputation. The family had moved on, my career was thriving, and my days were no longer interrupted by her nonsense. Then, out of the blue, I got a call from an unknown number. I usually ignore calls like that, but something told me to pick this one up. The moment I answered, I heard a familiar voice. It was Taylor. She launched straight into a sob story. She was broke. She had no support. Her friends had abandoned her. Her parents had turned their backs on her. She was struggling to keep up with rent, and she had no idea what to do next. I didn't respond. I had heard this act before. The same voice, the same exaggerated desperation. It was textbook manipulation. The same tactic she had used on everyone else for years. When silence didn't work, she quickly switched strategies. She started talking about how she wanted to rebuild our relationship, how family should stick together. Then, as if nothing had ever happened, she asked if I could help her find a job. That was when I laughed. Taylor, in a last-ditch effort to smooth things over, reached out to me. But instead of a real apology, she acted as though nothing had happened, pretending we could move past everything without addressing the damage she had caused. After trying to ruin my career, my reputation, my relationships, I stayed calm, letting her talk until she ran out of words. Then, I asked one simple question. Did you ever clear my name? There was a long silence on the other end. I could practically hear her mind scrambling for a response. She tried to brush past it, saying she had been young and stupid, that she didn't think it would go that far, that she never meant for things to get so bad. I didn't let her off the hook. If she truly wanted to make things right, she could start by admitting to everyone what she had done. A real public confession, a full retraction of her lies, an acknowledgement that she had been the one sabotaging me, not the other way around. Taylor panicked. She immediately refused. A confession like that would ruin her future. It would make her look bad. I didn't argue. I simply told her the truth. Then fix it yourself. That was the last straw. Taylor snapped, her voice shifting from desperation to anger. She called me bitter, accused me of holding a grudge, told me I was just as bad as she had made me out to be. Then she hung up. I blocked her number. Taylor would never change. And now, she was someone else's problem. I thought I was finally done with Taylor. I had blocked her, cut her off completely, and moved on with my life. But of course, people like her never go away quietly. A week after our last conversation, my workplace received an anonymous complaint. It accused me of being an abusive manager, claiming I mistreated employees, played favorites, and created a hostile work environment. It was full of dramatic language, vague accusations, and bizarrely specific personal jabs, things no real employee would ever say. I didn't even have to ask HR who sent it. The writing style, the phrasing, it was unmistakably Taylor. HR followed protocol and launched an internal review. I wasn't worried. I had nothing to hide. My team respected me, and I had a spotless track record. When I met with HR, I handed over everything: screenshots of Taylor's past lies, proof of her smear campaign, even the fake cease and desist letter she had sent. It didn't take long for HR to flag the complaint as fraudulent. They logged it into an internal database, marking Taylor as a bad faith complainant. Then, because corporate circles are smaller than people realize, my HR manager noted the incident in internal records. While this wouldn't outright prevent Taylor from getting a job elsewhere, it did mean that any future employer doing a reference check would get an honest account of her behavior. That's when things got even worse for her. A friend of mine in HR at another company reached out a few days later. Taylor had applied there. She hadn't put my company on her resume, probably hoping I wouldn't find out, but she didn't realize how interconnected HR departments can be. The moment they saw her name flagged in the system, they rejected her application on the spot. Taylor had severely damaged her reputation in my industry, but she still had opportunities elsewhere if she was willing to put in the work to rebuild herself. Then she made one final mistake. She called me. I let it go to voicemail. The message she left was exactly what I expected: a furious rant about how I had ruined her life, how I had made sure she would never get a decent job, how I was obsessed with her downfall. I called her back. She picked up instantly, probably expecting me to deny everything. Instead, I calmly told her the truth. No, Taylor, you ruined your own life when you tried to ruin mine. There was silence on the other end. Then she hung up. That was the last time I ever heard from her. Word got around the family that Taylor was struggling financially. Job rejections piled up. She had to move back in with her parents, who were finally seeing her for who she really was. They refused to bail her out. No more excuses, no more enabling. And I felt nothing. No guilt, no sympathy. Taylor had spent so much time trying to destroy me, and in the end the only life she managed to ruin was her own. Time passed, and Taylor faded into the background. I had nothing to do with her anymore, and for the first time in a long time, my life felt peaceful. Work was great, my personal life was thriving, and I no longer had to waste energy defending myself from her nonsense. Taylor, on the other hand, was living in the wreckage of the mess she had created. Her career was dead before it even started. The HR blacklist followed her, making it nearly impossible for her to get hired anywhere reputable. Every attempt she made to rebuild her professional life crumbled as soon as her name popped up in a hiring system. Her social life wasn't any better. Friends who had once blindly supported her had long since abandoned her. The leaked messages where she had trashed them behind their backs had ensured that no one wanted to be associated with her. Even the people who had originally defended her during the family drama had moved on, realizing she was nothing but trouble. Her parents had also checked out. My brother, who had spent years enabling her, finally admitted to me in a quiet, awkward conversation that he had been wrong. He hadn't wanted to believe that his daughter was a manipulative liar, but the evidence had been impossible to ignore. He wasn't supporting her financially anymore, and her mother had stopped making excuses for her. Taylor, once the entitled golden child, was officially on her own. Then, in a desperate attempt to fix her situation, she made one last grasp for attention. A post appeared on her Facebook, an announcement. She was starting her own business and asked for donations to help her get things off the ground. She framed it as an exciting opportunity, claiming she had learned so much from her past mistakes and was now focused on growth and moving forward. No one bought it. Not a single donation came in. Instead, the comment section was flooded with reminders of everything she had done. People called her out, bringing up the lies, the manipulation, the fake legal threats. One person even posted a link to screenshots from the family drama, just in case anyone had forgotten. Taylor deleted the post within hours. Then, not long after, she deleted her entire Facebook. I heard through family that she had been forced to move in with a distant relative because she couldn't afford rent. She had gone from being the girl who thought she was untouchable to someone who had no control over her own life. She was completely dependent on others, a far cry from the confident, arrogant person she had once been. And then, as if she hadn't humiliated herself enough, she tried to reach out to me one last time. This time, it wasn't an angry call. No threats, no accusations. Just a single message: "I'm sorry for everything. Can we talk?" I didn't respond. Taylor wasn't my problem anymore. She had spent so much time trying to destroy my life, and in the end, the only thing she had managed to ruin was her own. The family never fully welcomed her back. Even those who had once given her the benefit of the doubt remained wary. No one wanted to get caught up in her drama again. She had burned too many bridges, told too many lies, and proven time and time again that she couldn't be trusted. Meanwhile, I moved forward. My reputation remained intact, my career thrived, and I didn't waste a second more on Taylor's downfall. She had dug her own grave. I had simply stepped aside and let her fall into it. In the end, Taylor got exactly what she deserved, and the best part, I never had to lift a finger.